Kevin Hoare, and I am not Sunny Danforth. Sunny had a bit of a change of schedule, so I jumped in, and I'm going to be hosting tonight, and we are very honored to have with us State Representative Raquel Moore Green, who represents currently the 19th District in the State House of Representatives, and she is the nominee for the Republican Party for the 10th District in the State Senate. And this is a really important race, one that is currently held by a Democrat, but not only is Representative Moore Green familiar with how things work in the legislature, but she's a fantastic community member who is excited about what she's going to be able to accomplish should she win here this November. Representative, welcome to our show, and thank you for joining us. And you know, people with redistricting don't exactly know where these districts are. Maybe you could actually describe both your current district as well as the Senate district that you're running for. Is 19 half of Senate District 10?
Yes.
Do I have that right?
Correct.
So why don't you go ahead and describe the district
evening,
that you
Kevin.
are on the ballot for?
Thank you. Thank you. And to all of those this evening, it's a pleasure with you. My name is Raquel Moore Green, and I'm State Representative in House District 9, which currently is Turner and Almsville. And the redistricting process took House District 19 and shored it up with I-5 as its eastern border, and Liberty kind of over by Sprague as its western border. Southern border is now Creekside, for those of you who live in the area and understand some of the local locations, and the north end of it is State Street now. So it really went from a district which was in my mind one that is kind of a microcosm of the state of Oregon. Although Salem isn't a huge sizable, but we have issues that are different than Turner and Almsville, which are much smaller communities. They're rural, and being able to balance the needs of Salem and the needs of the rural communities takes, I think, a unique perspective and person who recognizes those differences. And with the redistricting, really formed 19 more of a quasi-metro. I mean, it's all city. There's in Four Corners, which is unincorporated. And so that's 19. And House District 20, which is the other half of Senate District 10, remains the same. That includes a piece of South Salem that butts up to the river and the Willamette River, and goes over to West Salem, down and into Monmouth and Independence. It pretty much stayed the same. So those are the two districts that make up Senate District 10. And part of the reason that I decided to move from the House to the Senate was that the representation District 10 by the senator hasn't been truly reflective of the values of our community. We value education, public safety, and we're a small business community. Oregon is a state, when you stop and you look at it, we certainly don't have large employers. And values that I bring to the cabinet that I've represented for the last or a little over 3 years now.
And so I want to make sure everybody can find Raquel's website. And I'm posting it right now in the feed, which is a great way to get even more information, and as well as to figure out how to support her in this campaign. And this is an important seat because it's really hard to change the numbers in the state Senate, because it's only once every 4 years that these seats are up for election usually. but also, there's election cycles that are good, unless in election cycles where the wind's at your back, and sometimes it's you're running in uphill. But the issues that you mentioned seem to be particularly important this time around when people are taking a look at a Republican candidate. Education is, I think, one of the ones that stood out, and you have several themes on your site. Government accountability, which I think everybody believes is desperately needed. Safe communities, when you talked about the issues that people are having with crime and related topics. Education, healthcare, the issues of families that are working and what they have to deal with, as well as natural resources, because you mentioned that you've got portions of the district that are more focused on the natural resource-based industries, perhaps, than some of the suburban and urban areas. And that's a diverse group that you're able to represent. Tell us a little bit about education in particular, because that kids are going back to school, right? And that's what's on a lot of people's minds right now.
It sure is. And some of the schools have already started here in our areas, as I'm sure they have in other parts of Oregon. And with kids returning to school, parents are concerned. One of the things that I hear on the doors, and I was specifically had a conversation with a gentleman at the Polk County Fair in August, and he said to me, my kids lost 3 years worth of schooling during the pandemic. That was his sense of the loss of place. And period of time, I think parents also saw some of the things that that were going on, and they just thought, I need to be more. Seen a real resurgence of parents' involvement and desire to participate in the decisions that are being made around curriculum, around delivery, and so on and so forth. And I read an article today that said about 30,000 families here in Oregon out of the public sector. And, public education is very important. I've always said that if a child can read, they can do anything. It's a real leveling field. And we know through not only research, but, actual facts and figures that the two things that help move families up are housing, permanent housing, home ownership specifically, and an education. And that's the two things that our country has always been so in this country, and are really anybody's well-being and the well-being of their family.
I noticed that you highlighted that a comprehensive education needs to be rigorous, transparent, and include parental input. There's a lot of parents who don't really feel like they've had an education system that was responsive to them. And you highlighted in particular about educational standards, which seem to have been going the wrong direction, as in down, instead of the kind of educational standards that you could be reassured that kids would even know how to read at grade level when they graduate in many parts of the state.
True. Yes, that's very true. So in 21 session, there was a bill that lowered the high school graduation standards. And so a student need only have a 10th grade graduation. They need to graduate. That creates all sorts of questions. We have students coming out of high school that have got a 10th grade, level of learning and knowledge, and now they're going to go to a community college. There's a gap there because community college, is prepared for the student with a 12th grade graduation. as our four-year institutions are. So it will create a problem in the system and how that our system is set up for students to move through, and it's very concerning. We've a workforce development or a workforce issue, and for those of you who might not be more familiar with that term, but many of you know that employers have had a difficult time in hiring people that they just haven't been there. And we're not exactly sure what has contributed to that. I think there's a lot of speculations around many things. But what we do know, it has wide open here in Oregon and here in the Valley, and we don't to fill those positions. And then the ones who are coming, lack some of the basic skills to even perform jobs. I was talking with a business owner last fall. I hosted a business round. Wanted to hear from local businesses. So what do you need when an employee comes to you? What do you need? And one of the comment that he's had folks come in, or young people come in, and they don't even know how to use a measuring tape. And so that just seemed really far-fetched for me. Those are some necessary, and when we lack those, it's very difficult for an employer to bring that person along and work with them to the point that they know. And then go back to the parental involvement piece. As a grandmother of 13, I was certainly involved in the day-to-day ongoing education of my kids. I was a single mom, and I worked for several years full-time before I had an opportunity to stay with children. And even as a parent that worked, I was involved with the schools, as many are, and you are engaged, and parents are the first teachers of their children. And here again, I believe the pandemic brought to light that I'm working, I can still be involved in my child's education. As a matter of fact, I want to be involved in my child's education. And so that I think has sparked what we're seeing. I know locally here in the Salem Kaiser area that there have been several new groups that have come together to be active. I've heard of others throughout the state as well. I will always default to my time in the classroom and helping teachers and students learn.
Well, and it's interesting that this has been sparked by a greater desire of parents to become engaged in the education system, which is something that was supposedly always encouraged. One of our viewers here is stating some concern about pushback from schools and folks that don't necessarily welcome parental input or engagement. I can imagine that this is something that you're familiar with hearing. What are you hearing from people when you knock on doors and talk to voters that they would really like to see change soon about the education system that the kids are going through?
I think the one common theme that I get on the doors is they want the basics. They want the math, the reading, the writing, and you can't fault them for that at all. I mean, those are necessary skills, and although we may never use trigonometry or calculus in our everyday life, as adults, we certainly use addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. We can't get by without those, and so I think here again, they're looking definitely for the basics. They're also wanting rigor. They want their children to be challenged. They, the lack of honors classes and access to AP is advanced placement classes at the high school level is of great concern to members here in the community, and is something that needs to be available. I mean, we have all ranges of students, right? We have those who excel, we have those who keep pace, and then we have those who struggle. And I was one of those kids who struggled in school, and to have the resources and the ability to work with all those types is very important. Just like us, with 3 kids, not each one of them was alike, nor did each one of them learn the same way. My 3 kids, I have a son and 2 daughters, and they were as different as not. And as a parent, I do to be able to pivot and address, their needs, make sure that, when they were doing they needed the pieces in front of them to move around, so that they could see what a group of 5 looked like. And then when you take it apart, what does 2 and 3 look like, right? And spelling and, writing, all the same way. So I do think that parents are looking for that. They're looking for the rigor, and they're also looking to make sure that, the individual needs of their students are being met, regardless of academic ability.
Those are really good insights. And thank you for sharing that with us. You mentioned earlier, small businesses were telling you what they need when they're trying to hire somebody. And it sounds like that's where education and some of the needs of small businesses connects. We're a small business state, as I understand it. Yep. Especially you highlighted that for your district. And small businesses have obviously taken the brunt, the toughest impact from what occurred in the past couple of years with COVID and lockdowns, and then so many other things that happen. I'll bet you're a breath of fresh air when they get to talk to you about what they need and what they'd like to see going forward. So what are you hearing from them, or what are some of your priorities for the small businesses in our state?
Well, for the small business owners, entrepreneurs are interesting people. They say that the average successful business person tries 15 times before they actually get to a point where, they're really successful and steam behind them in that, what I have heard from business owners is that they did just about anything in order to survive during the pandemic. I had the honor of helping distribute some local community investment dollars to some businesses here in Salem this past week, and there was a gentleman who was telling me that he actually changed his business model so that he would meet some of the criteria that, the temporary criteria of gyms. If you recall, the gyms were closed down, and he was a fitness that's beyond just working out at a gym. I think he had some other components there. I mean, he said, I was just determined. I needed to stay open. I had a family I needed to feed. I had employees on me for their livelihood, and I think sometimes people, yes, they're the owner, but they're the employees. I mean, that's like going home every night thinking about, maybe 10, maybe 15 people who you and families at the end of the day are dependent upon you as that business, or that you're making the right decisions so that they get their paycheck, they keep food on the table and clothes on the head over them, So what I hear is, could you just stop? Could you not put any more regulations on us? Could you just stop taxing us? Could we just have an opportunity to thrive? Could we just call a timeout? And to that, one of the statistics that I heard the other day is that the cat tax, the corporate activities that people that pay into that tax, 6% of the revenue generated by and of the people, providing 6%. Well, who are those 2/3? Well, they're the folks that, the threshold of $1 million, they just bump over it, right? And so, what if we raised that threshold, and gave some relief to those small business owners? And so that's a conversation that I plan to have when I get into when I return to the legislature in January of 2023. I think it's a really important aspect. I mean, these are little things that really do make an immense difference to business owners.
That's interesting what you said. That maybe it's time to put some government regulation and some of the taxes that are particularly detrimental to small businesses that have suffered so much. Put them in timeout. I think some regulations and some taxes that get sent to timeout sounds like a great strategy. And you just need someone who actually believes that's the best thing and listens to these small businesses. And that sounds like the feedback that you're getting. Small businesses also, you just pointed out something I think very important. If you're the small business owner, or if you're somebody who's working at that small business, that job, that business is essential. And so many things are deemed unessential over the past couple of years. Now we got to get back to treating everybody like they matter. And these small businesses generate quite a lot of the jobs in our state too, which is something, they're probably having a hard time finding people to hire, in addition to the taxes and the regulations inhibiting their growth. What do you think is going to be the opportunity here to change the direction that the state's been going for 10 years on many of these things? What would be at the top of the list, do you think?
To change the direction that the state's going in? I guess yeah. So I don't think it's news to anybody that the people overall, Oregonians, are dissatisfied with the direction that the state is going in. And I think what we read in the news, what we hear is that it's crime, and that it has just really gotten. And here again, reverting back to the small business owners, I've spoken with several of them over the last few weeks. Just talking about the difficulty they have with, folks coming and sleeping in their doorwells or in their on their grass overnight, and then things that are left behind and having to come back around and clean that up. And then a lot of, the petty theft and the, I can never, the quality of life crimes, that they don't affect you directly, right? It's not a crime. But it does affect you. I mean, home is trauma. That means somebody to your home, by a very personal, private place, and taken something from you. And so the increase in crime is that, but also violent crime. And there's speculation that the legalization of the hard drugs of heroin, meth, and fentanyl via Measure 110 has really contributed to the increase in the violent crimes. When you have hard drugs that are available to purchase, sometimes the people who sell those things are rather nefarious and create situations that are not safe, and they end up being very violent. and we need to address that in a big way. And we've had increase in overdoses. I think that's a 700% increase in overdoses in the last 2 years. And here again, some do tie that back to the legalization of those hard drugs.
You just beat me to the segue because, yeah, small businesses are actually impacted, as are just every average everyday citizens, by the need. They need a safe community to thrive economically,
Yeah.
for their kids to feel safe, function within the society, go to school. Um, and then you mentioned Measure 110, which seems to have had the exact opposite impact of what was advertised to voters when that
Yeah.
was on the ballot. Uh, I can imagine doing something about that impact is one of your top priorities. And also, there's been quite a bit of legislation which seems to have made it easier for people that not to go to jail for crimes that or not be fully prosecuted, and then others to get out sooner. The governor, of course, has been very engaged in trying to offer clemencies to thousands of people incarcerated for very violent crimes. What are you hearing from people on the doorstep about their concerns about what's happened to their communities and how it's worsened in what seems like just a few years?
Right. So if I could just touch on Measure 110 for a moment and kind of springboard from there. Um, what for the people on the doorsteps who understand Measure 110 and can engage in a more robust conversation around that, truly believe, and rightly so, that people who are addicted, the best way to get them off drugs is to get them into rehab, and that truly was one of the main pillars of an addict. That addiction needs to be addressed, in the hopes of ensuring that addict doesn't go the criminal justice system, but rather ends up in the substance abuse rehabilitation system, and the mental health, behavioral health helps that are out there for persons addicted. They took away the carrot, honestly, because to be caught with, or to be stopped with, previous to 110 with illegal hard drugs, you were taken, and there was a diversion. They had the ability to go to a drug rehab, drug treatment. I think many people did take that route, and there were others, I'll just go route. And while jail is not the place for to receive services, it certainly is a place for 24 hours for somebody to come down off their high, and have a quick moment to assess what direction they want to move in. And so that carrot was taken away. What happens now is they get a citation, and it's $100. And if they call a number that's on there and service, which is what we want them to do, right? We don't want them. Their ticket is waived, that citation fee is waived, and they start down the path of recent services for their unfortunately, but if they don't call that number, they don't seek services, there's no way to encourage them to, or to make them. There's nothing in the law that them to accept services. That's the gap that is the piece that is missing. And while the money is there for the addiction services, because that's marijuana tax money that has been earmarked to go to fund these recovery services. We have the money there for those services, but we don't have that individual connect to those services in a more meaningful way and in a more impactful way. Last time I looked at the Measure 110 report that we get, I think there had been close to, well, the one that I remember vividly was earlier this year, there had been about 1,800 stops, citations given, and there had been about 20 people who had actually called the number. So it's not having the impact that we hope for. And that needs to change. And that's a conversation that I know across the aisle that are willing to have that conversation. And I think we're going to, legislative days coming up here in September might reveal some of those conversations moving forward. So that's Measure 10, and I serve on the Behavioral Health Committee. I'm vice chair in the House on that, and it's of utmost concern, definitely on my radar.
Well, it's interesting. Also, one of your priorities is government accountability, and I know that the intention was that Measure 110 was, as you mentioned, with the tax on cannabis sales, was going to create an infusion of funds for treatment. But Oregon, for some reason, is 50th in the nation in treatment, which was a shock. We're number one in meth, but we're 50th in treatment. It seems like there's maybe a government agency accountability issue here that the legislature should be particularly well equipped to engage in. It sounds like some of your colleagues are willing to do this. It sounds like it would be great if that priority you have is something that we could make apply to this problem.
Right. Yeah. A little background on the mental health delivery system that Oregon has had over the last, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. When we closed down Damage, there was the promise by the state that, gosh, if we get this out into the community, if we have community services, that it will meet the needs better. But they never fully funded it. And that's always a problem with the legislature. I think the legislature at the time that those decisions were made, legislatures change, the people and the priorities change. And so how do we ensure that we've got a system to address those needs? Who was a long time representative out of the Portland metro area. I met him right after I was sworn, and we sat down. We talked about the behavioral health, and he had been on the healthcare committee forever and a day, and he had a vision for what that roadmap needed to look like, and he knew we needed a road. What was happening was not working, and he had vision for that, and he had passion for that, and unfortunately he passed before he was able to get that transferred, and it really inspired me to want to continue to serve in this arena and say, so what does that pathway look like? And you're absolutely right. We've had some hiccups with getting that money out and holding the agency accountable for the distribution of the money to get those services started within our communities has been an issue. They've been before us. They came before our committee in June. I believe we had legislative days. They'll be presenting to again in September. And we know one of the issues is the Oregon State Hospital. And I realize that we can't just, build and build and build. However, our population has grown. We added just over 1 million people in 10 years, but we haven't increased the size of some of the services that are given. And, when we have a drug and addiction problem in this state, there should be greater vision and greater leadership in this area. And that's one of the things that I will bring to this. Senate in this capacity is get that out and let's get that roadmap, because what we have been doing doesn't work. And we need to do better.
The leadership would be very accountability and leadership. That's music to people's ears, and it's great to hear you talk about that, because I think they know that they're paying a lot of taxes. There's a lot of money being allocated or budgeted for things, and then when they see that spending goes up 38% on something, they don't see 38% better results. They like to hear that leadership and accountability is what's going to be coming. I'm curious, you mentioned a topic before we were on the air about workforce preparedness, and I'm not as familiar with that. Is that kind of related to what we were talking before with education, or maybe you could just explain that a little bit so that we can put that out in front of folks as a topic that you're pursuing?
Sure, thank you. Yes, and let me, about 10, well, maybe more like 12 or 15 years ago here in Salem, the business community came together, and I'm talking manufacturing, construction, some of the trades, and along with the professionals, it came together and said, gosh, what are we missing in our community with our kids, with getting them ready? Because we know not all of them go to a 4-year college. It's wonderful to aspire to have a formal bachelor's, a master's, a PhD. Those are all very admirable, and we need people to pursue that. But not every student is designed for that, and sometimes that level of learning at the collegiate level comes at a time in life. I think there are a lot of people who realize that we don't have to do it everything. As a domino. We can take that breather, we can go do something, and we come back and we can get our educations. We can continue to further our education, where it was just that you did this, and there was an order to it, and there was a time. And I have found not quite as structured that way. It doesn't mean it isn't meaningful. To my point, though, so there was a partnership between some private business, some nonprofits, and the education and the school district here in Salem, and they formed CTEC, and that's Continuing Technical Education Center. And they have programs that bring the kids in, I believe, starting in their sophomore year. And so for in healthcare, they start to learn, what does it take to be a nurse? What does it take to be a respiratory therapist or a physical therapist? And, while they're very elementary courses, they start to prepare them for the workforce. And so when we talk about workforce development, that's what I mean. And there was a manufacturer up in the Jervis area who, was specifically looking for some, understanding of CAD machines and so on and so forth. And, sure enough, welding's huge, right? Electrical engineering, electricians, plumbers, all of that. And, had classes that start to prepare the students for that, so that when they come out, when they graduate, they can go, take that course or go to an employer with some skills in them, ready to hit the job, start that job the day they get there. Now they'll need additional training as they go forth. I was talking with some electricians the other day, and actually, I think it was PGE, talking about, how it is that they bring them into their program, and then the opportunities those young people have to further their knowledge and ultimately become a lineman, but preparing them up ahead of that. So the workforce development. And then at the junior, the community college level, we have people who had been in the restaurant and lodging industry during COVID and decided that that's not where they wanted to be anymore. And so for them to go back to a community college and here again have that workforce training, workforce development that allows them to change careers, take another trajectory, all very important.
It's really interesting because every single area that you just mentioned where people are going into or could go into are desperately searching for people to hire. And
Yep.
and there's just virtually unlimited opportunity right now for
Mhm.
anybody who's well prepared for this, which would help small businesses, would help large businesses.
Right.
It would actually create a better and stronger tax base as people
Absolutely.
move into employment. It would make people happier that they could pursue and make pretty good money, because some of the
Yeah.
things you just described there, I'm thinking in the healthcare profession, uh,
Mhm.
they are so desperately short on people because everybody knows how hard it is to even get an appointment sometimes with
Right.
specialists, or to even talk to a live person when you want to go to a doctor's office. And it's because they lack people with the background and skills that they need. Physical therapists is another
Right.
great example.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, this is a real hands-on and constructive solution to problems people are facing in their everyday lives. And when you mention healthcare, is that kind of one of the things you're hearing from people, that
Oh,
healthcare
oh,
needs
yes.
help in that regard?
Yes, yes. So I mentioned I serve on the Behavioral Health Committee. I also serve on the Healthcare Committee. And so, I have daily, or not daily, but used to be daily, but, I certainly have ongoing meetings with healthcare providers, not only locally, but throughout the state. There are several CCOs throughout the state that I meet with and visit with on a regular basis. And the nursing shortage, there's a doctor's shortage. um, and the pandemic was very, very hard on everybody, no doubt about it. Regardless of the job we had, being isolated, being restricted from normal activities, was very difficult. And then those who had to uh, help those who were ill. I mean, that's a whole other level of stress that has been added in, and so we have seen a shortage in the workforce for nurses, for everything in the medical arena. It doesn't matter what it is, and it's going to take some time to recoup that. And, in the interim, what we don't want to lose is we don't want to lose our local hospitals, who know the community, who can serve that community, and the members of the community trust that organization to provide them the care that they expect. We can't have those go away. And one of the things that was pointed out to me the other day when I was talking with one of the hospitals is that they've had to bring in traveling nurses, nurses from other parts of the country, and obviously they're paid more, right? They're brought here for a period of time. They've left their home state, they've left the comfort of their communities, and have chosen to work in another state. And yes, they do receive more money for doing that. And what it has done, it has, there's been a disproportionate effect, obviously, on the budget of the hospital, right? You budget for the next year, and you've got your what you think you're going to be paying in payroll, and let's say it's $100,000. I know it's much more than that, but that's an easy number for me to work with. And and it's been doubled because you've had to pay nurses in order to have your patient served, and to meet the need. You've had to hire in more expensive people, and so you've just now doubled your budget. Well, your revenue hasn't necessarily doubled because you weren't allowed to have all those procedures. The knee replacements, the hips. So some of those uh, um, procedures that help to keep the bottom line in lack for hospitals. And so it's a real quandary that we're in. And I don't know exactly how we're going to come out of it, but I know that there are a lot of people who want to find solutions, and we will. We'll work through this. We always do, and I think that's the entrepreneur in all of us, right?
Yeah, we're can-do society. We like to believe there's a way to solve these things and roll up our
Yes.
sleeves. It just takes legislators like yourself who are focused on constructive solutions and listening to people who are having the problems, and then crafting something that is accountable and focused on achieving the outcomes and the results. It's not good enough to virtue signal when people really have these needs out there, and it's great to hear you describe the things that could address people's real problems where they are every day. I just wanted, by the way, to one more time to mention to folks your website. It's RMGSD10. So it's Raquel Moore Green, Senate District 10.com. That's where folks can go there. I'm going to donate to your campaign. I want to encourage others to do so as well, because we know that to get the word out, uh, we actually have Republicans have to raise the funds. We don't get it for free from the media so much, and and the post office doesn't send mail for free, and the TV stations don't do TV ads for free. But we need to get what your message is out to folks at the same time that you're trying to make sure that you can have a rigorous campaign operation. Obviously, knocking doors. You must be knocking so many doors, talking to people in the community, holding these round tables with members of the community in various sectors, and taking this valuable input, which helps you not only perfect policy but connect with people. So I want to encourage people to do that. You can also follow Representative Moore Green on Facebook at Raquel Moore Green for Senate District 10. I just clicked follow there. It was really easy, and that helps you stay on top of what's going on in her campaign. I saw that you've got here, it says Defend Small Business PAC is highlighted here, and that's something desperately needed. And you received their endorsement, which means
Yes.
that people are recognizing what you represent for small businesses and for the community. And so that I just saw on Facebook, and that's what everyone, if they follow your Facebook page, can stay on top of as your important campaign rolls out here. Is there anything you want folks to know about what you see coming in the coming weeks? If there's people in your community there who want to connect with your campaign and get involved, what do they need to do?
Well, if you just go to my website, as Kevin pointed out, and there's a volunteer option there, and just click on that and fill out the form. And if there's something special you want to do, let us know, and we'll make sure that you get connected. We are door knocking, and the phones are going to be starting here soon. We writing note cards, just all sorts of things to connect with the voters. And I see somebody here has asked me to post my district map, and thank you for pointing that out. I will go and I will get that posted on Facebook tonight. I can show it to you here. It's not going to show up too well, but that's what the map. Oh, opposite of where I'm going. There we go. The map of the district, but I will get that put up. I'm not well on Instagram because of the size of it, but I will definitely get it on Facebook for you.
Thank you. I think that's very helpful, because then people feel connected to the district. And the other thing I was going to ask is, sure, and I was going to say, what is kind of the parting message, the theme? If somebody says, well, I don't know anything about Raquel, but what is the number one thing that they probably need to remember? That you would say, tell them this, and then this is why they should vote for you, and also why you're going to represent a better option, certainly than your opponent, as well as a better option for the community. What would be a good kind of thing to just leave them with here?
Well, okay. So here's the lowdown, ladies and gentlemen. No one party, no one person has all the answers. And that's how we've been governed for the last 10 years. We need common sense, level-headed people to represent the ideas and the needs of Oregonians in the legislature. And I am the candidate that will do that. I have a proven track record. I have done that, and I will continue to do that as your senator in Senate District 10. My name is Raquel Moore Green, and I ask for your vote.
Fantastic. What a great way to wrap up. And I know that was just off the top of your head. You've probably spoken to so many people in so many groups that it was probably, you had it, but that was great. Thank you so much. That is a great way to wrap up our show. Thank you again for taking the time to talk
Absolutely.
with me and for our viewers and everyone. Please share this show with everyone you know. Even though only some people can vote for Raquel in Senate District 10, all of us can support her, and we can make a difference for the entire state by helping her over the finish line by supporting her with donations and encouraging people that we know in our family that might live in the district to vote, and friends, because this is a great opportunity for the entire state. Raquel, once again, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with the rest of the campaign. And we'll be watching and following, and look forward to having you on the show again as Senator-elect. That will be the most exciting thing of all. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and we will see you on the next episode of The Captive Audience. We'll be back. I don't know if we'll have one on Monday. It's Labor Day. I think we might be taking off that day, but we'll be back on Tuesday, and it should be David Darnell and I talking about the latest headlines. There's always so many things to talk about. Have a great night and enjoy Labor Day weekend.